Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming 2022 United States Senate elections and whether Republicans have the opportunity to take back the Senate, which currently has a very slim Democratic majority. Currently the Senate is evenly split with 50 Democrats and 50 Republicans, but Democrats control the Senate due to Vice President Harris being able to break the tie vote. Before I start, I'd just like to say if you like my content, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. And with all that said, let's get into it. So I have it started with all the states that are generally considered safe for each party. For the Democrats, that's Oregon, California, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, New York, Connecticut, and Vermont. And for Republicans, we have Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, both Oklahoma's regular and special elections, Iowa, Arkansas, Louisiana, Indiana, Kentucky, Alabama, and South Carolina. And with all that said, that leaves us with 42 Republican seats and 44 Democratic seats to start. So next, I'm going to talk about more solid states that aren't really part of the consensus, and I'm going to start with Washington. Polling indicates that Washington could be a little closer than usual this year, and I think it's possible it drops below 10 points, but until we get closer to the election, I'm going to keep Washington as solid Democrat. I also wanted to touch on Alaska because Murkowski's facing a Republican opponent, and I think it's possible Murkowski is ousted and replaced by Chewbacca, but either way, the seat is staying Republican, so I'm calling it solid Republican. In the state of Utah, a lot of people think it might be closer due to Evan McMullin running a third-party campaign, and this is just wrong. He couldn't even get Trump's 2016 margin to be a likely margin, so there's no way he gets Mike Lee to have a narrower victory. Utah is solid Republican. Finally, the state of Missouri is also solid Republican. Greitens is a pretty weak candidate due to scandals when he was governor of Missouri, but he's still going to win by double digits, so I'm going to call Missouri solid Republican. With the solid states out of the way, let's get into the likely states, starting with Colorado. Michael Bennett's a longtime incumbent running for re-election, and he's always significantly outperformed the national environment in Republican-favored years. And Colorado has shifted very far left recently. He will win by a likely margin, probably by around 9 points. As for likely Republican states, we have two, and I'll start with Ohio. Vance has a platform that is very Trump-like, and Trump won Ohio by big margins. Polling shows Tim Ryan catching up to Vance, but polling in Ohio also had Trump and Biden neck and neck, and Trump ended up winning by 8 points. So I think Vance is probably going to win by a similar margin. I do think Tim Ryan's going to do better than like an average Democrat, but I mean, he's not going to win. Similarly, in Florida, we have Marco Rubio running for re-election. He outperformed Trump in the state by 7 points in 2016, and Florida's only gotten more Republican since then. He's an incumbent, and the Republicans have the environment. He'll win pretty easily, possibly by a solid margin, but for now I'm rating it as likely Republican. Now we can finally get into the toss-up states. I'm going to go west to east, starting with Nevada. Nevada has had a surprising Republican swing recently. In 2020, Nevada actually swung against the national change, and although Trump did lose the state, he lost it by a slightly smaller margin than he did in 2016. A big reason for this is that Hispanic voters are starting to swing to Republicans, which can be seen in 2020 exit polls and polling done since Biden became president. And also, the Democratic Party has been ravaged by the Democratic Socialists of America takeover, and they're just making bad decisions. Luckily for them, they have the incumbency advantage with Catherine Cortez Masto, but Adam Laxalt has name recognition due to his father, Paul Laxalt, being a popular former senator from the state. It seems like the stars are kind of aligning for Republicans in Nevada. There hasn't been much polling yet in Nevada, but Laxalt is barely behind in the 538 average, and aside from a slight dip recently, he's only been gaining in the polls. I think Laxalt's going to win by a little less than 2 points, so I'm rating Nevada as tilt Republican. In Arizona, incumbent Democrat Mark Kelly was elected in 2020 to fill John McCain's seat in a special election. Kelly outperformed Biden by around 2 points, and Arizona's been trending left in recent years, but it's not totally out of Republican reach yet, in my opinion. There hasn't been much polling other than Democrat internals, so it's hard to call this one properly. I think the red wave is going to help Republican Blake Masters in this election. Masters has a populist Trump-like messaging, which a lot of people argue will hurt him in Arizona, but I think a more neocon message would actually hurt him more, as he needs to rile the Trump base, which McSally was unable to do in the special election in 2020. On the other hand, Kelly has been playing the part of the moderate in his messaging and has a pretty wide lead in the polls. It's going to be closer than the polls are saying, but right now I think Kelly's the favorite, so I'm rating Arizona as lean Democrat. The state of Wisconsin is a state that's been on a rightward trend along with most of the rest of the Midwest. It's easily the most Republican of the upper Rust Belt states that vote for Trump and Biden, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And there's a Republican incumbent, Ron Johnson, running for re-election. Biden was able to narrowly flip Wisconsin back in 2020, but I think that might be something of a last hurrah for Democrats in the state because It's just been trending towards Republicans. There isn't a ton of polling out of Wisconsin, but it seems like it's pretty close. However, Johnson always outperforms expectations, and Wisconsin polling is usually pretty horrible and overestimates Democrats a lot. Johnson usually has pretty strong victories, and this year is going to favor Republicans down ballot. So I think Johnson's probably going to win by around 3 or 4. So I'm rating Wisconsin as lean Republican. Next up is the state of Georgia. Georgia's pretty rapidly moving left, but it's not unwinnable for Republicans yet. Raphael Warnock was elected in a special election in 2021, which had a lot of factors that helped Democrats. Firstly, Trump had just lost the state, and morale was low for Republicans. And also, Kelly Loeffler ran a horrible campaign in the state. Warnock does have the incumbency advantage now, but Herschel Walker will be able to rile up a Republican base and will probably be able to outperform Trump in suburban Georgia, which is what cost him the state in 2020. Polls have the state extremely close, with most having either candidate winning by 3 or less. It's going to be a nail biter, but I actually have Georgia as tilty. I think Raphael Warnock is going to hang on. North Carolina is a state that generally produces narrow Republican victories. Both Donald Trump and Senator Thom Tillis were able to eke out narrow victories in 2020, even with everything stacked against Republicans. Republican Ted Budd is facing Democrat Sherry Beasley, and I think he's going to win relatively easily. He's a popular congressman in the state, and Beasley doesn't have as much name recognition. I think Budd will win by a similar margin to Johnson in Wisconsin, around 4 points, so I'm rating it lean Republican. Pennsylvania may be the weirdest state of the cycle in the Senate. Dr. Oz is facing off against Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, and polling has Fetterman leading by a decent amount, but until recently, this was considered one of the most competitive races in the country. Fetterman has been having health problems, which is a really bad look for him, and it also kept him off the campaign for a little while. But Oz isn't running a stellar campaign either. Oz won the primary after being endorsed by Trump, but he's distanced himself from Trump since. He's probably trying to have a more suburban appeal, and will probably be helped by Mastriano in the rurals since he's on the governor's ballot. And in a way, they're going to help each other in this election, as Mastriano has more rural appeal, and Oz will be able to do better in the suburbs. I think this race will also be closer than the polls show, but it's clear that Fetterman's the favorite currently, so I'm rating this race lean Democrat. Finally, we have New Hampshire. There aren't many strong Republican candidates to put up against Maggie Hassan, especially since Chris Sununu announced he was running for governor again. She has a low approval rating, but I just don't think there's any strong Republican candidate that will be able to win this seat, so I'm rating this race lean Democrat. With that, I have Democrats retaining the Senate with a very narrow 50-50 majority, as Vice President Harris would be a tie-breaking vote, because Democrats are going to flip Pennsylvania and Republicans are going to flip Nevada. There's still 2 months to go before the election, so this is subject to change, and I'll try to update this in October and November leading up to the election. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel to keep up with my predictions. Also, comment what you think about my predictions, what you agree with, and what you disagree with, because I'd love to hear it. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.